right, hello, I'm Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com, and I'm doing this, I'll be looking at two cameras here because I'm recording this both for Instagram and for YouTube. So I'll put this up on YouTube later, and I wanted to get some people live running this with me. So hopefully everyone enjoys this video. It should be an interesting one, especially for people who've been trying to learn for a long time and still are having trouble communicating. So I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com and the world's #1 English fluency guide. And it is a pleasure to welcome everybody joining me live here. Hello, nice to see you guys there. Let me know where you're from, and we'll get right into this. We'll give maybe people a second to get in. But this video, I wanted to talk about something, basically a question I get from people very often, and it's connected to why speaking doesn't get you fluent. And I want to make it very clear at the beginning that this is not about speaking is never a good idea. At the kind of base of it, fluency is really more about developing your understanding, and then that leads to confidence, which leads to fluency. So we'll talk more about that in this video, but I really wanted to talk about kind of the bigger thing, which is having live lessons. And I know many people are concerned that they can't improve unless they have live lessons, even though they've probably had live lessons for years. So it's nice to see you all there. Let's get right into the video. So I wanted to make this one specifically talking about a movie. So I had recently watched for, I don't know how many times I've already seen this. So this is one of my favorite movies, and it's called The Shawshank Redemption. And if you've never seen this, I highly recommend this. It's not a movie for kids, but I really think you would enjoy it. It's a movie about perseverance. So this is where you're continuing to try something, to be maybe in a tough situation, and in the end you finally overcome, or you win, you achieve victory in that situation. If you've seen that movie before, fantastic. If you have not, I highly, highly recommend it. I think it's one of the best movies of all time. Fantastic story. It's called The Shawshank Redemption, and it's based on a Stephen King book. I think the name of that book is, what's the name? I forget it. But it's basically Shawshank Redemption, Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, I think, or something like that. But anyway, so I'm watching this video, and there are so many great lines in this movie. There's so many great lines in this movie. And one of them, I'll just put it up here for you, is get busy living. My writing is pretty awful, so get busy living or get busy dying. So get busy living or get busy dying. Now, the reason I'm thinking about this line, and there are many of these fantastic lines in this movie, and not just this movie, but really any movie where you have, it's a thing that gets into popular culture with a lot of fantastic lines, like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. So there's a scene in the movie Predator where he has a large knife and he throws it into this guy's chest, and the guy, he just kind of turns around and throws a knife into this guy's chest. And Arnold says, "Stick around." And he's like, he's basically like kind of stuck this guy onto like a post in the middle of this small room. But there are so many great lines from this movie, and also this line here. So get busy living or get busy dying. Now, obviously, this is a really great quote. I'll tell you kind of the context of it. Basically, the main character, this is Andy Dufresne. So this is the main character of the movie, and he's sitting and talking with another prisoner in a Shawshank, or in the Shawshank prison. And so they're sitting there talking, and Andy is saying, wow, what I would do if I could get out of this prison? I would go down to Mexico, and I would open up a small hotel and have a boat and take people out fishing, that kind of thing. And so the other guy, Red, this is played by Morgan Freeman. So Morgan Freeman is saying, well, I've been in here too long. I don't think I could, if they let me out, I don't know what I would do. So I've been institutionalized. So they're sitting there talking, and being institutionalized means he's been in prison for so long that he needs someone to tell him what to do all the time. And if he gets out, he'll have basically too much freedom and he won't know what to do. So the main character, Andy Dufresne, he says, well, I guess there are just two choices then. So Morgan Freeman is saying, well, I don't think I can do it. I don't have the power to do that. And so Andy says, well, I guess you get busy living or get busy dying. You get busy living or get busy dying. So the idea here is that either you're focusing on preserving and increasing and developing your life, or really there's no other choice but to basically end it. So you might as well kill yourself if you're not going to, have hope. So the story is really about hope and persevering. But this by itself is a really great quote or a great idea just to inspire people. But the more important lesson for me is when I'm watching this, something really interesting occurred to me. And it's something I wanted to remind you about as you're learning languages out there. Hopefully I'm not making people feel funny as I'm looking at both of these cameras. But the basic idea is this. I'm sitting in my room just watching this movie on my computer, and I'm not sitting there with the actors. I'm not in Shawshank Prison, but I'm still learning the vocabulary. All right, let me say this again. I really want to make it clear. And of course, as I'm recording something, there's always got to be a fire truck or an ambulance or something like that. So I'm not in my old recording space is a little bit inconvenient. This one is a lot easier to use, but the sound quality is not as good. So you take what you can get. You take what you can get. So anyway, I'm not sitting in that prison with them. I'm not sitting there live with them, and yet I'm still learning the vocabulary. All right? Now, if you think about the way most people learn, especially today now, you've got little kids or even adults, they're sitting and watching a device, maybe a phone, or they're watching their TV or something like that, and they're consuming some kind of media. Maybe you're watching this just like on Instagram or on YouTube, and you're getting this information without a person live being there. Now, this is a live video. I'm talking for the people who are joining me live on this video right now. They're here live, but I'm not physically with them. They're learning and teaching with them. We're not having that experience. But the still important thing is that you can learn something like this, and this is where a lot of the popular culture comes from. So native speakers, kind of the big point of this video is really just to explain that native speakers, when they're learning, most of what they're learning is not from what you might call a live, in-person lesson. Okay? So native speakers are not physically there with someone as they're learning the language. And yet, when I'm watching the movie Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger as, like an 8-year-old kid or however old I was, I'm learning all of this great vocabulary, and then I run around the house, saying like, "Mom, stick around," or like all the other, great lines from that movie, or all the other pop culture references that we hear. It's mostly, if you were to draw like a chart of the amount of information you get when you're very young, obviously when you're like a baby or whatever, most of that information is coming from your parents because you're not watching movies or, TV shows or things like that. I mean, usually maybe from about 1 or 2 years old, you're starting to watch maybe some programming for little kids, but most of that is your parents. But as you get older, a lot more of the media that you get, a lot more of the learning and the vocabulary you get does not come from live in-person people giving you information. So all the major kind of things in culture that happen, all of the vocabulary, especially movies and TV shows, all of that stuff is not from a live lesson. All right. So the same thing with music. You are not sitting there with the artist as you're learning some kind of vocabulary. You're getting that as, either listening to some headphones or watching a music video or maybe a concert or something like that. But most of this information is stuff that you're not physically there with the person. And so when students think that they need to have someone there, that's not how you learned your native language. So why do you think you need to have that for learning English or for learning any other language? Now, you might think, well, I need someone to correct my speech. And that's like the main value of having someone there to teach you. So you have someone there, you say something and you say something incorrectly, then you have someone there, obviously, okay, no, you don't say it like this, you say it like that. All right? Now, the truth is, if you're learning that way, it means you actually don't understand what you're saying, and that's why you're making mistakes in your learning. So the value of having some teacher there is because traditional lessons are actually making it more difficult for you to understand what you're learning. And that's why you make mistakes. Now, what really happens is if you're actually learning and you're understanding the vocabulary the right way, so you actually understand something when people are explaining something to you, rather than trying to give you a bunch of rules of vocabulary and try to have you memorize lists or, again, studying rules, what's really happening is you're not understanding the vocabulary. So when you try to speak, that's when you make mistakes. Now, what's actually happening for native speakers is, they're getting some feedback from people, but really they're just spending time watching what other people are doing, like in movies like this. So if I'm, 5 or 6 years old and I'm watching a movie about Shawshank Redemption or, Predator or whatever the movie is, I'm learning lots of vocabulary even though I'm not there. And I'm learning what the correct thing to say is by getting the correct example. All right? So I'm learning the correct thing to say by getting the correct example. I remember looking through a Japanese textbook, and this was teaching things about grammar, and it was giving explanations about things. And I said, I honestly don't know what this is trying to tell me. So kind of information for linguists, the kind of higher level stuff about learning vocabulary, if you don't understand what people are talking about, if you just talk to a native speaker and say, well, you have to think about like the dependent clause or the main clause or the past participle or phrasal verb or something like that. If I use all that language learning vocabulary with people, most of them do not understand what I'm talking about. Well, it looks like that got paused due to poor connection. Okay, I'm back. Now, when you're learning this way, again, it's these two different ways of learning where one of them is whether you're learning with a live teacher or not, you're studying rules, you're trying to memorize vocabulary, or you actually just get understandable messages from what's happening. So in this situation, I can just write a phrase on the board like this and just say, oh, get busy living or get busy dying. But what's really happening in the movie as you're watching this is you're learning because of a moment. You're seeing these two characters sitting there and they're basically discussing, should we have hope or should we not have hope? All right? And so it's that moment that really is connecting and setting up that situation to help you understand the vocabulary. So rather than just finding this, get busy living or get busy dying, if you see this written down just on a piece of paper on the ground and you've never seen that before, you would probably not care about that at all. And then you would probably not remember that information either. But because you see it in a movie, it's the moment, the emotional connection you have, and seeing the situation, the two native speakers actually having that moment, that real-time moment right there, that you learn the vocabulary without being in that situation with them. Okay? So this is how we actually learn, and this is why you don't need to have a person right there with you in order to learn. Understand that because, I'm going to repeat myself here, but this is because people have been learning in what I would call the traditional way, where you're trying to memorize grammar rules, you're studying translations, you're learning vocabulary lists. That's what makes it difficult for you to speak, all right? So when you try to repeat yourself, okay, I've learned get busy living or get busy dying. And I read that in a textbook and I've got no real emotional connection to this. Okay, get busy living or get busy dying. I don't know what that really means, but okay, I can just remember these words. So when people think about speaking practice, they think about just repeating something like this again and again. So get busy living or get busy dying. Get busy living or get busy dying. But do you really understand what's happening and why these characters are using this? And that's really what it means. So you're connecting the situation with the vocabulary. I say this again and again and again because it's so important. You don't want to try to translate something. You don't want to try to think about this and try to diagram the grammar. That's not how you learned your native language, and it's not how you're going to become a fluent speaker in English. Okay? So if you already speak another language and you're doing this naturally, it's probably because you learned the same thing this way. Maybe you were young and you also maybe watched movies or something where you were getting that input, the correct native input that you get from watching movies or just listening to other people talk. But you don't need to have someone there physically with you to teach you, okay? So you're learning this lesson from me right now, even though you and I are not physically in the same room, and you can practice this just by listening to people say it. And so you'll hear this in the movie. You'll see this situation. So Andy and Red are sitting there talking, and Andy says, well, get busy living or get busy dying. And then you hear the phrase again later in the movie when Red gets out of prison. So he's walking around, and now he's in this real life situation where he's got freedom again, and he doesn't know what to do. He can't even go to the toilet without asking for permission because, again, he's been institutionalized. So he's been in that location, in that institution for so long, in prison for so long, he doesn't know what to do. And so he thinks about, should I kill myself? Should I give up hope? But then he remembers that conversation and he thinks, well, I guess get busy living. So start doing that thing. Get busy living or get busy dying. Get busy living or get busy dying. So you're learning the real situation and what I call the naturally varied review, where you're hearing the same thing again and again. Get busy living or get busy dying. And you don't need to hear the situation or hear the phrase or see the situation thousands of times for you to understand it. Really, the more emotional something is, the more powerful and the more memorable it becomes. All right? Hopefully this makes sense. So when you're thinking about, do I need to have a live teacher with me? And I need a live teacher because I need someone to correct my mistakes. Number one, if you're learning the right way, you won't have an issue with making mistakes because you're getting correct examples the same way natives do. And number two, when you're actually listening to these, you hear what you should be saying. So you don't, again, getting the correct examples, you don't need to worry about having someone tell you what to say, because you're seeing exactly what to say, and then you can tell, just like listening to a note when you're listening to a song on the radio. So if I hear a song, I don't have to have the actual musician right there with me to know how to sing that. So if I hear something, if I hear a note on TV or a note in a song like ding, I can try to make different notes until I hit that same one, but I know when I'm making the same note. Ding, ding. Okay, I got it. So now I'm listening and I can actually sing along with the song even though I've never met the person singing it before. Okay? We all do this all the time. There's nothing special. I don't need to have Michael Jackson right there with me for me to learn Thriller. Okay? I can listen to the song. I can hear it a few times without him being there to teach it to me. All right? So we do this all the time. So you don't need to worry about having a native speaker or having a teacher right there with you, as long as you're getting real examples. And you're going to get many of those, again, from movies and TV shows, things like that. And the reason I recommend people watch movies, obviously, is you're getting a lot of this same input. But the even better thing is just real, natural conversations between native speakers. Because native speakers make mistakes in conversations. We're not always speaking correctly. In a movie, these actors have rehearsed something many times, so it's not as natural. The problem with being an actor is that they have to practice something to make it look natural, but most people don't naturally speak that way. People make mistakes in how they're explaining something, or maybe something just doesn't come out properly. It happens. So when you're learning movies and things like this, this is really just a great example of showing that you can learn a lot of great vocabulary without you physically being there, and you don't need a native teacher, and you can just hear these different examples, and this will show you how to communicate correctly without having a live teacher. All right? Does that make sense? All right, I'm going to go back and see if anybody had any particular questions. But basically, the idea here, remember, just to wrap this up, is to say that you don't need a live teacher in order to get fluent. So you also don't need to be in an English-speaking country in order to get fluent. It's really just about getting the right input. So when you learn get busy living or get busy dying, you hear that and you understand what that means without a person trying to explain what the grammar is. You understand, okay, I should have hope, I should keep working, or I should basically end my life because that's the only thing I have left to do. All right, let's see. Someone's asking about how to reduce accent. So there are a couple things you can do for accent reduction. One of those, well, there are basically two things. I'll just put them up here. So there's the kind of two basic things about pronunciation. The first one is learning the actual sounds. So we have the sounds of words, like the sounds of words individually, and then you have the sounds of words together. And when you're trying to learn pronunciation or trying to reduce your accent, really you're trying to switch from how you pronounce words to how people pronounce words in English. Now you can sound like me, or you can sound like other people, depending on who your model is, maybe someone from the UK or a different accent from the United States, something like that. But basically you're learning the sounds of words, and part of this is learning the same way that natives learn pronunciation, which is learning basically how to read like how a native speaker learns to read. And so we learn in English the sounds of individual letters make different sounds like this. K, a, t, cat, cat. And so you're learning this, and then you learn, like if we add an E to this changes the sound of this to A to make Kate. Kate. Like educate. Something like that. So even if Kate by itself, it could be a name for somebody like Kate Blanchett, I think, uses this name, the spelling with a C. But you learn the rules of pronunciation like this, and this is how you start pronouncing words like a native. And then the second part of this is learning what I call the one rule for pronunciation. This is what I teach in Fluent for Life and Speak Like Me. And this is learning how sounds blend together. So native speakers, you can hear me now. I'm speaking in blended phrases, not just, I don't speak individual words. I don't speak like that. You can hear me blending the sounds of my words when I speak, blending the sounds of words when I speak, because we speak in phrases. So when you're learning English like this, I'll just give a common example that I use, that train. So that train here, you can hear when I say it, that train, that train, that train. So the first T basically disappears. Now, I don't want to give an explanation about flap T's or whatever. I think it's not important. Actually, it's really just confusing for people to try to think about International Phonetic Alphabet and other things. This is why I don't talk about grammar rules. I just help you understand grammar like a native. But when you're listening to this, the interesting thing about learning words as a child is you begin by listening to the sounds first, because young children don't know how to read or write. So you listen to the sounds first, and your dad says, oh, that train over there. So if you were to write that down, you would not even put a T in this word, because it doesn't sound like there's something there. So this is a tricky thing. As you're an adult learner of English, you're learning the process backwards. So you're trying to go from seeing words on a page to pronouncing it correctly. And this is why so many people tend to make mistakes with pronunciation, have trouble with their accent. So they're going backwards rather than learning the same way from the sounds to the writing. So when native speakers are learning, as young children, they're learning that train, that train, that train. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I cover it elsewhere, like I said, in Speak Like Me. But the point here is that you're doing basically these two things. So if you learn the sounds of words the same way natives do, and then you learn how to blend them together the same way natives do, then you reduce your accent. Basically, you start sounding like a native. So everything I do, just like talking about that, the example before about get busy living or get busy dying, what we're talking about is like, you start with learning like a native speaker. That's basically what we're doing. So this is actually how you start moving up like this and start developing fluency, where the traditional method is like you just keep learning more and more, but you don't actually get anywhere. All right? I'll erase this line over here. So if we were to have like a chart here, so this is like your fluency level, and this is time down here. Most people, what they're doing is they're continuing to learn more and more words. So like if you're watching YouTube videos and you keep learning more and more, but then you forget them, this is what you were doing. You're learning more and more, but you're not actually developing fluency in anything. But what natives are doing is over time, they're actually learning and developing fluency. So they're learning more words and developing more fluency. But as you learn this way, because it's all one system, everything is connected. Grammar, pronunciation, listening, vocabulary, all of these things are connected. And so you don't have to worry about like, well, my listening is good, but not my pronunciation. So that's a problem that only happens to non-native learners, because they learn like, okay, here's a listening lesson, here's a pronunciation lesson, here's this other lesson over here. That's not how native speakers learn the language. Native speakers learn as one thing. This is listening and pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, all of those things are in one thing. All right, so this is what I teach, and this is why it's so important to learn this way if you want to speak. All right, let's see if we got any more questions over here. Usually people are pretty kind to me. I don't get so many questions. I can't speak fluently because I overthink grammar. Yes. All right. So that's another good point. This isn't a particular question, but I understand what you're saying. So they're saying I can't speak fluently because I overthink grammar. I can't speak fluently because I overthink grammar. Again, that's this problem down here. The reason most people struggle when they're trying to learn English is because, okay, we're going to have a grammar lesson right now, and I'm going to diagram a sentence. So like this is a bird. I'm terribly sorry. I know my writing is horrible. Bird. I'm just trying to do this quickly. So this is a bird. This is a bird. Now, when you're learning something like this, okay, so we're going to have what is the subject, what is the object, what's the verb, what are we talking about here, and we're going to diagram sentences and teach you the names of like vocabulary things that maybe only a linguist would know. But my rule, I have a very simple rule for learning vocabulary and grammar, and this is if a native would not do that thing, I don't do that either. If a native would not do that, I don't do that either. All right? So I know more vocabulary about like language teaching words than the average native speaker because I'm a teacher. But if I'm talking with a native, I don't use that vocabulary. Often I will quiz people. I thought about doing a video about that where I just ask natives, do you know what like a phrasal verb is? Because I know most people would not know what that is. And it doesn't matter. They know how to use that fluently even if they don't know what that is. It's kind of like, can you use a toilet even if you don't understand how the plumbing works? Same kind of idea. All right? But so if you're confused about grammar, it's because you're learning this way. The teacher says, okay, we're going to do grammar, and we're going to have a bunch of grammar tables. I still see videos like this on YouTube. Still, now when I first started teaching on YouTube 10 years ago, I saw video as a way of actually making it easy for people to understand the language by seeing the language work. All right? So if I have something in my hand like this, I'm going to put it down on my hand, and I pick up the marker, put down. Pick up, put down. That's the value of video, okay? So when you can see something the same way a native speaker can actually learn something, and I would teach my daughters, so my 2 children, I teach them the same way, all right? So what a teacher does on YouTube is like, okay, we're going to look at like to be, and we're going to look at I am, and he is, and she are, or whatever. You know, people are going to go through and diagram, kind of break down the conjugations of grammar like that. It's a complete waste of time. It's not how you would naturally learn a language, and that's why if you learn, I'll write this again. You've probably heard me say this many times, but I'll say it again. How you learn is how you speak. All right? Just like that, get busy living or get busy dying, how you learn is how you speak. How you learn is how you speak. All right? So if you study grammar rules, when you learn with grammar rules, of course you're going to think about grammar rules when you speak. All right? And if you learn grammar automatically, like pick up, put down, yesterday I picked up that thing. Tomorrow I will put that down. All right? If you're learning that automatically, seeing the grammar, and this is not just for like basic things like a phrasal verb. I mean, that's kind of like a very basic level where you're teaching kids. But they're taking that vocabulary and learning through stories and actual examples of people or people in movies or their parents or whoever doing things in real life. And so that's how they're learning grammar. So this is the learner here, and this is the native. And the only difference here, a native doesn't mean, you're native, you were born somewhere. It just means how you learn the language. And this is why anybody can learn a language like a native speaker. All right? This video is talking about too many different things. I'm sure people will ask more questions about things. But in general, all of the things in language learning come from it's like one of two choices. All right. So either you learn like a native, or learn like a student. All right, so either you learn like a native or learn like a student. I apologize again for my bad writing here. I'm trying to do this very quickly. So either you learn like a native or you learn like a student. All right, and most people who are learning languages think it's not possible to learn like a native speaker unless they are a native speaker. But the funny thing is, the only thing that makes you a native speaker is learning like a native speaker. So it's like a weird, kind of circle here that just goes around and around. All right? I know it sounds very funny, but like nobody is born speaking a language. It's either you learn like a native, so you become a native, or you learn like a student, so you become a student. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so it's not being born a native. It doesn't matter where you live or who your parents are or how old you are. I could take a young child and I could sit there with them and do grammar tables and try to have them memorize vocabulary, and they would not become a good speaker because they wouldn't understand the language like a native. It's understanding the language like a native that makes you a fluent speaker. All right? So again, beginning this whole video talking about speaking doesn't make you fluent. Obviously, you get to speaking at some point. That's the goal. The goal is to become a fluent speaker, but you don't start with speaking, okay? You start with understanding the language like a native. Understanding builds confidence because you understand what people are talking about. You've probably been in a situation, I've been in situations before for learning or speaking Japanese, and someone says something to me and I don't understand what they say. And immediately I feel like, I'm in trouble now. So usually I just say, I don't understand what that is, or could you tell me more, or something like that. I don't feel terribly embarrassed about that, but I know it happens to a lot of people. So you get into a situation, someone says something to you and you don't quite understand what they said, and you can't actually communicate back with the person. And so that's because you don't understand what they're saying. If you don't understand something, of course you can't communicate well. All right, so you don't have to feel bad about that. This is just how most people teach. All right, and most people teach this way because they think this way is impossible. That's really it. Okay, so it's not being a native or being a non-native. The only thing is learning like a native or learning like a non-native. Okay. So in my opinion, and from like the 20 years that I've been teaching, I have found this to be true for myself and also for my students. And this is backed up by research. Also is basically, there's only one way to learn a language if you want to speak it fluently, and that's this. All right. This will teach you a language, but it will not help you speak fluently. Okay. So you can learn. Like I could learn for a test. I could try to study Polish or Chinese or something like that and memorize some words for a test by studying this way. But if I want to actually communicate with people, then I need to learn like this. All right? Hopefully that wasn't going too long about that. Let's see if we have any more. So how to develop influence. Do you mean fluency, or are you talking about influence itself? So influence, that's an interesting idea. Basically, influence, I thought about making a video about this before just because many of my students use their speaking for public speaking or in business situations for motivating people. So I talk about some of these things in the business lesson sets that I have. But I'll just make a very quick point here about influencing other people. So basically the thing that really gets other people or kind of motivates or influences other people is you influencing yourself by having, basically like a strong value system for whatever that thing is. So the reason like other people follow what I do is because I'm very strong in my belief about what I do as a teacher. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. So people, I'll teach you another quick phrase here. So if you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. If you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. If you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. So to stand for, and then you've got fall for, so these are two phrasal verbs, and this is a very common expression in English. So if you stand for something, to stand for something means like, this is what I believe, these are my values, this is what I stand for. So I stand for helping people understand English like a native so they speak like a native. Okay? It's really that simple. So other people do not believe that's possible. So if you stand for nothing, if you don't have any beliefs, then it's very easy for you to get, taken, this person says something, so you go listen to that person, but oh, that person over there says something, so now I'm going to listen to that person instead, and that's where you get fall for anything. So you will believe anything if you don't have your own beliefs. So influence, motivation, all that really comes from you personally leading yourself. So if you can lead yourself, if you can direct your own life, it becomes much easier for other people to follow you. You become attractive to other people as you develop strength in like leading your own values in your own life. All right. So I don't know if that was a question about fluency or influence, but hopefully you enjoyed that. All right. So I have good vocabulary, but when I start speaking, I forget words. Okay. You'll notice these same questions come up from people over and over and over again. And really, it's just because of these two ways of learning. So either you can get busy living, you can get busy learning like a native, or you can get busy struggling like a student. We can take that phrase and make it our own phrase about learning. So if you know vocabulary, this is that same example before. We've got our little chart here. We've got the person who starts learning. Now this could be a young child who's a native speaker, who will become a native speaker, or this is an adult learning English, but it's more about how they learn. So this person over time will develop fluency. This person over here, they're learning the traditional way. They keep learning more vocabulary, but it just gets forgotten. So they learn vocabulary, but they don't know it well enough. They don't understand it well enough to actually communicate. Okay? So this is why people have that trouble down here. This is why they keep learning. Really, people will do this for years and years and years when they could just do this instead. Okay? So once you stop, and it's actually quite easy to go from here to up here, like that. All you have to do is start understanding like a native rather than trying to understand like a student. Okay. All right. Good question, though. Let's see. Do you think listening comprehension is the better way to improve fluency? It's just understanding in general. Part of this is listening, but it's comprehension of grammar, comprehension of vocabulary, comprehension of pronunciation. It's just understanding all of these things. It's not just about one thing. Remember, this way of learning is talking about, okay, the secret is reading. No, the secret is like listening. No, the secret is watching things. No, the secret is studying grammar. No, the secret is listening to, native speakers or something like that. Whatever people think this is. But the truth is, like, all of these things together are what happened up here. It's one thing. As you're listening, like as you're listening to me right now, you're listening, you're getting pronunciation, you're getting vocabulary, you're getting grammar, you're learning these things without me giving you a lesson about it. Okay? So it's not about doing a particular thing. Once you understand anything, if you understand anything, like I pick up this marker, I put this marker down, if you understand that in English, then you will be speaking that because it's easy to understand. All right? So understanding, I'll draw this up here as well. So understanding leads to confidence, leads to fluency. So most people think that you begin with speaking when really it's understanding. So speaking is not what's getting you fluent because really that's just repeating phrases that you probably don't know very well. All right? If you know them well, then you communicate confidently and automatically. But if you don't know them well, you will have trouble doing that. All right? Let's see what else we have over here. Okay, we got a kind of smiley, crying face. Is there such a thing called an outdated word? How do we know that a word is rarely no longer spoken by a native speaker? Well, I mean, vocabulary changes over time, and it can actually change quite rapidly. You will have new vocabulary that comes in all the time, and new generations will have new vocabulary, or you will have new vocabulary for new technology. Like the internet, when I was born, was not a thing. But when I was starting to get older and when I went to college, that was, when we start having the internet really. And now current generations who are being born now, they have computers, and my two daughters know how to operate a phone and find things. And, my young daughter is like ordering Uber Eats, by herself on the phone. It's like, what? I don't know how kids are doing this stuff, but they figure it out. But anyway, the vocabulary does change, but unless you're, like speaking Shakespearean English, like thou ought, like that. Unless you're using something from many years ago, you're probably not going to have a problem with outdated English. You might have things like if you use an expression from a different time period than like maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So each generation will have its own kind of, catchphrases or slang or vocabulary that's just for, like, especially new things now. Like, I don't know what 20-year-old or 10-year-old kids are using right now. But there's always the core vocabulary, and then there's like a very, very, very thin layer of slang on top of that. And the reason is because most people are using the actual vocabulary because we need to communicate with each other. We all can't just have our own slang expressions. So I wouldn't worry about your vocabulary being outdated as kind of a silly thing to worry about, especially if you're just, number one, learning from native speakers. So if you pay attention to what native speakers, like listen to the vocabulary I'm using right now, there's nothing outdated about what I'm saying. And so you can, when you're learning from native examples, the same way natives do, when you're getting native examples, this is when you actually, you don't have to worry about vocabulary being outdated. That's a good question, though. All right, let's see here. All right. Somebody's hungry over here. Let's see. Are just Brazilian asking about grammar also people from other countries? Yes, this grammar problem it's all over the world. And it's because most people around the world learn English the traditional way. So it's not like when you're, as a person in Brazil, I'm guessing Portuguese is your native language. So you learn that out talking with your friends and your family without getting grammar instruction. When you get into school, you probably get some grammar instruction, but it's already after you learned the language for the most part. And then the language becomes more difficult when people are trying to make you learn those particular vocabulary expressions that only linguists or academics would use. So this is, again, why I don't worry about that, but this is the grammar problem or pronunciation. All of these things, they're all over the world. It's not just in one country. So I have students, a lot of students from Brazil follow me, but obviously people all over the world have that same problem. When I used to teach here in Japan, in the classroom, all of my students are learning from a Japanese teacher. And so they would have those same issues. They would listen to me and get kind of the better pronunciation, but most of the time they're just learning, kind of studying grammar rules for tests. If I find native speaker, my speaking will develop. Yeah, so this is not true. Again, I began this video talking about an example from a movie because native speakers are learning most of their vocabulary from people they don't have a personal connection with. So I don't know Morgan Freeman. I've never met him personally, but I've seen him in many movies. And so I can know, I get his accent, or I can learn vocabulary like get busy living, get busy dying. So I used to, kind of mimic his accent a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can do some Morgan Freeman. So now I'm losing my voice. Morgan. Yeah, I can't do it now. I need to drink some water. Give me a second. Morgan Freeman. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, my voice is kind of bad now. But if you get me, let me relax after lunch, and then maybe I'll be able to talk about Andy Dufresne. Yeah, I can't do it right now. But the point is, I don't know Morgan Freeman, and I've never met him before. The same thing with all of the people like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've never met him either. But I know all of the lines from the movies that I used to watch when I was a kid. So you don't need to have a native speaker there. I wasn't waiting. Imagine if native speakers said, well, I can't watch that movie because I'm not physically there. You know, that would be a ridiculous thing to do. You don't have to wait for people, and you don't need to have a native speaker right there with you. So if you want to wait for that, you can, but it's certainly not necessary. All you need is the actual native input that you're getting from people, and that's how you get fluent. So you don't need someone to be there with you for speaking practice. That's not how you get fluent. You have to understand the language well, and then over time, as you're getting more and more examples, that's how you develop fluency automatically. All right, let's see if we have... All right, great explanation. Thank you very much. Glad to hear it. Let's see if we have anybody else. Enrollment for your course. I need to do it. All right, well, if you'd like to learn more, I'll give you a very quick... if you'd like to learn... So this is on Instagram. You can click on the link in the Instagram bio, and for people watching on YouTube, you can click on the link in the upper right of this video or on the link in the description below this video if you'd like to learn more about courses. But very quickly, so what I do is have this... It's funny, I've been teaching for 20 years, and what I spend most of my time doing is just changing people's beliefs. That's all I do. So once you believe you can get fluent like a native speaker, then you can actually get fluent. Okay, so you can get fluent like a native speaker. Now, of course, you won't speak exactly like a native, and it depends on where you live and what the examples that you're learning with. But if anyone believes this is not possible, tell me why, and I will tell you why that's incorrect. So I've answered this question for about 20 years from people. All right? So I'm saying you can get fluent like a native speaker, and again, it doesn't matter wherever, so wherever you are, however old. So wherever you are, however old you are, and even if you don't speak. All right? I'm going to say this again because my writing is obviously horrible. You can get fluent like a native speaker. So remember, I'm not saying you would obviously it takes time to learn the various vocabulary, but if you focus on a particular thing that you're interested in, like how to give presentations, or you want to talk about cats and dogs because you have a friend who talks about that, or you want to have better business conversations at work, whatever, if you focus on that, you can become fluent very, very quickly by focusing on that particular thing. So you can get fluent like a native speaker wherever you are. So it doesn't matter. Many of the people I help, I remember one guy I started helping years ago, only watching my lessons. So he lived on a mountain in Thailand, I think. So he'd in a small village, and he just wanted to learn English. And so he was asking me, is that possible to do? I said, yeah, as long as you're getting native input, if you're learning the same thing natives do, it's just like watching a movie. So you're seeing those examples, but you have to learn in the right way. You can't just see something one time. You have to learn it in different ways, the same way natives get fluent. So part of getting fluent like a native is getting all these different examples from people. All right? So you can get fluent like a native speaker wherever you are, however old you are. So this is another thing people believe. They believe that you get fluent because you're young. They think little kids there's something special about young kids. And I will agree that maybe your memory gets a little bit worse, like if you're, 90 years old or something. But in general, adults have advantages that kids do not have, like the ability to be patient and focus on something for a while. So little kids, you can't teach them anything for 5 minutes and they're running around doing something else. But adults, you can actually sit and listen. And if you're getting that right review, you will become a fluent speaker. All right? So wherever you are, however old you are, and even if you don't speak, this is the most important part. Even if you don't speak, I actually don't want you to speak. I want you to understand the language. Understand the language like a native. All right? I've done this before. I'll give a quick example of this about, I'll give you a Japanese lesson. We'll see, maybe I have some Japanese people watching this. Maka maka, maka. Aoi maka, ao, ao. Kuro, kuroi maka, aka, akai maka. Kuroi maka, kuroi shatsu, kuroi shatsu. Kuro, 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 kuro. Aka, kuro, ao. Aka, kuro, ao. Kuro, kuro. All right, very quick lesson in Japanese. I didn't try to use your native language to teach you Japanese, and even if you understood maybe only a part of that, if I continued teaching you that way, again, it's not about just getting one piece of input. You're having to continue to get this. This is what I call naturally varied review. So as you're getting something, if I say kuroi maka, like a black marker, you're understanding that without me translating anything. And remember, how you learn is how you speak. So if you don't translate when you learn, then you won't translate when you speak. If you don't translate when you learn, you won't translate when you speak. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so just a quick example with some basic markers in Japanese. If you understand Japanese already, maybe that lesson didn't work on you. I often do this with an alien language, so I just make this up, but I wanted to give a quick example of that about how you learn. So a basic example, you're just seeing something physical like that and you're understanding that. You take that foundation and learn things like stories and see actual native examples of people doing things. That's how you get fluent like a native, all right? So when you understand like a native, you get fluent like a native, you can speak like a native. But the great thing is that you don't have to spend time practicing speaking. It's just getting the input so you feel really strong about something. I'll give you another quick example in Japanese. So when I first came to Japan, I would just put the television on sometimes, and most of it, I didn't understand anything really at all. And this is because I didn't speak any Japanese when I came to Japan. And I'm watching this, and there was one phrase that I heard over and over and over again. And I just learned it just by, even if I wasn't saying it, just hearing that phrase in different ways, in different contexts, from different speakers. I learned, okay, I understand. So the phrase was, Goran no sponsor no teikyo de okurishimasu. Goran no sponsor no teikyo de okurishimasu. And I even before I could say, regular have conversations, I was still saying basic words, but I learned that one thing. And I'll tell you what it means, because you probably don't know Japanese, but it means, basically brought to you by these sponsors. So brought to you by these sponsors. And this is something you will hear watching American TV as well. It's like, this show was brought to you by, or sponsored by, like this thing. So you're watching a TV show and sponsored by somebody. And so little kids will learn expressions like that just by hearing them again and again. Well, this is sponsored by such and such. And so I would hear that and I would walk around. I couldn't say basic expressions. I could say hello and, goodbye. But then I would say kono bangumi wa goran no sponsor no teikyo de okurishimasu. And people are like, why do you know that expression? It's well, because I'm learning it like a native speaker. And so once I started learning native, like a native speaker, that's how I got fluent in Japanese. All right, please, where on YouTube? Okay, maybe someone is talking about something else. Let me see here. How do you pronounce the word? How do you pronounce the word quarrel? Like a fight, like a quarrel? Quarrel? Is that what you're asking about? Like to fight, to quarrel? Quarrel. If you're looking for pronunciation of individual words and you want to, like I mentioned before about that, go to EnglishAnyone.com/Frederick. Get that app. So this is, I got a great mail from a learner not that long ago about how she used to get pronunciation training in her university, and it's basically what we do in the app. So if you'd like to get basically university pronunciation training in your pocket for incredibly cheap, get that. So I will teach you how to say different phrases. So let's see. All right, so we got join. Lots of people joining the, let's see. All right. I think maybe that's, hopefully that's the end. Is it possible to learn for a woman 50 years old to speak as a native? Yeah, absolutely. So we have people over 80 years old. 80 years old are learning in our programs. and they're not learning for work because they're already retired. But number one, they just enjoy language learning. And number two, they know language learning is great for keeping your mind sharp. Keeping your mind sharp. So using your mind, it's like a muscle. You get to exercise it. And so learning a different language, and the way they do that is understanding it. And really, there's no more awesome feeling than understanding something in a different language, just like I gave you that before. So without telling you what these words are, when you understand them, you feel powerful. It's because you understand the language, and that's what's giving you the confidence to speak. Ao, kuro, aka, kuro. It's the same thing, okay? So if I tell you, hey, blue is ao, red is aka. If I do that, that's what most people do when they're teaching, because they're stopping you from learning. Most people are actually stopping you from learning languages the right way. They're stopping you from understanding the language, and that's why you have trouble using the language, all right? So because my sister that I invited here says she can't, yes. Remember your beliefs. So I'll keep this up here, but if you believe, so if you, making sure that, maybe that's too high for people. If you believe, is that too high for people? Yeah, maybe. I'll put it down here. If you believe you can't, you can't. And also, if you believe you can, then you can. So most people, it begins with belief. And again, like I said, I've spent maybe 20 years just trying to change the beliefs of people, which is maybe the most difficult thing on the planet to do. But the nice thing about what I do is that most people are really struggling with what they do, like for work or just everyday communication, because they've been learning the traditional way. And so once they make that switch, what I call basically activating the fluent communication switch in your brain, there is a fluent communication switch basically in your brain. Activate this, flip this switch, and that's when you start speaking. All right? That's when you start speaking. I get very excited about this, but that's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to be in an English-speaking country. You don't have to have an English-speaking friend. You don't have to have a live teacher. You're learning from me right now, even though you and I are not physically in the same room. You're not saying anything back to me. You're just getting the input. And if I can do that, if I can give you that input, just a little bit, maybe 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour every day, while you're just listening and, doing whatever, but you're understanding the information, you will get fluent automatically. You don't have to have someone there. You will naturally develop confidence, and the confidence will lead to speech. All right, let's see if we go. Sir, when I talk to natives, I get them, but when they are speaking to each other, I don't get them properly. I wonder why. Usually, natives, we call this code switching. Code switching. It's like when you're talking with one kind of person, you will speak in one way, and then you will speak in a different way to other people. So my mom does this a lot when she's speaking to my kids or like my wife or whatever, she comes to visit me in Japan, and she will make weird sentences like that aren't grammatically correct because she thinks that's a good way to communicate. She's like, we go park. And she will say that to people like, why are you speaking to me like that? And it's because she's trying to make the sentence like very easy and basic for people. So often natives, when they're communicating to you as a learner, they make assumptions about words that you know. So also you'll notice, like for the people, especially in Fluent for Life, they see me speaking as I normally do when I'm talking to friends, and I'm speaking faster. I'm using more like idioms and slang and other phrases like that I wouldn't normally use when I'm trying to help people understand something. So this is why a native can have a conversation with you and you can understand that, but as soon as they turn and they're talking with another native, it's like a different language. All right? So if you want to understand that language, that's what I teach. All right. What is the role of writing while studying through MEC2, and how much do we need to write? All right, good question. So when people are going through lesson sets, what I talk about, basically you're learning what I call naturally varied review. You're learning in different ways, okay? So the first day, you will have like one lesson, like you're watching the grammar focused lesson for a lesson set. And again, it's teaching you pronunciation and grammar and real examples, but I break it down so that I teach you in simple steps rather than trying to give you everything at one time. So basically a lesson set, the way it works is I'll take a real conversation and then I'm going to split that up into different pieces. And so one of those is going to be grammar. I'm going to have some vocabulary, but I mean, all of these things are connected, but I try to give it to you in simple steps. So that way, when you get to the conversation, kind of a fun thing you can do, if you watch the conversation first, like we moved the conversation to the very beginning of the lesson set, if you watch the conversation first, you will understand a lot less than if you went through the different steps and then finally got to the conversation here. So what you're doing for writing, you will begin, like this is the grammar lesson, and you will just watch it one day. That's all you have to do. So maybe like 15 minutes, half hour, however long you have. You just begin by watching the lesson. So you watch, and then the second day you just listen. So you just, you turn off the video, you just listen to the lesson. And again, it's kind of letting you train your body. You're getting that memorization, that review automatically, but you're not doing the exact same thing. And this is very important because your brain naturally gets bored of doing the same thing. So if you just watch the same video again and again, it will get boring for you. If on the first day you watch it, the second day you just listen to it, the third day you can try writing or you can try reading the lesson. But for writing, you can just take as much time as you have, where you have, like, I'm going to write maybe like 10 sentences. I'm going to just listen and try writing that. And you want to write by hand. So not like typing on something. You actually want to write the physical words on a piece of paper. So maybe if you have a notebook or something like that. And then just write as much as you can do in, 15 minutes or 10 minutes, however much time you have. And you don't have to think about it. It's really just slowing the language down. So often when you hear something, it can be very fast, it can be overwhelming, but as soon as you write it down, you're like, okay, this is what they said, and you can make the connection between, like the example I gave earlier about that train. So you'll hear it as that train, but when you write it down, you see it as that train, all right? So when you're writing, just take the amount of time you have each day. Even 5 minutes a day is just fine when you're learning to write something, but it's just taking that same piece of content. So you don't have to do the whole thing. Just take a piece of it and then start writing that. Okay, what do I need to do when I don't understand certain words that I don't know? Words that is not easy to encounter explanations by scenes with action. So if you're talking about watching a movie and you want to understand more about that, you can get the transcript of the movie. So what we do in our lessons is we have transcripts for everything. And we actually made a whole video player specifically for learners where there's a transcript going at the same time the video is playing. So we actually built a video software for people, a specific video player that lets you look at the transcript, and right when something happens, you can click on that word. And so you can get a definition for that if you want to. I recommend an English dictionary definition if you want to do that, but you should be learning everything in English. And most of what we do in the lessons, it's supposed to be for people that understand most of what we're talking about, but then we're going to give you some more difficult or challenging or new vocabulary as well that are going to help you improve. But in general, you should know maybe 80 to 90% of the movies or the books or whatever it is you're watching, so that you don't have to go to a dictionary. So you can understand from context the same way natives do. But if you don't understand something, it's okay to look something up in a dictionary. Let's see. Teacher, I always speak very well, but now I'm forgetting why. Well, speaking is it's like any kind of activity you do where you have to keep doing it. So you have to keep getting more input. If you stop learning or you stop practicing, then of course you are going to lose that ability. I find actually this is like my chance to use English, because most of my day when I'm speaking to people, I'm speaking in Japanese. So I kind of forget some English as well. All right, let's see if we have any more over here. Well, you are the best teacher. Wow, you guys are too kind over here. All right, well, hopefully, let's see. If I didn't get anybody, I think I did, though. Let's see. I am really willing to try your system, but I need to see that your system works. This is the second time that I've listened to you. Do you have any trial lesson in your YouTube channel? So if you understand what I'm saying right now, you can go to YouTube and just look up English Anyone, and it will give you examples. You can look up like the Fluency course or Master English Conversation. There's a playlist on YouTube. It should be like it will give you example lessons of how this works. But understand that developing fluency is something that like the system provides. Like you can't just watch one video and get fluent from one video. It doesn't work that way because the fluency is the review that you get from the same way natives are learning. So even a native child, I'll tell my daughter something and I'll need to tell her many times before she really gets something and is able to use it fluently. So first, children are just listening to what you say. So they're listening to parents speaking, and they might try to use something, but they don't really understand what they're saying. But over time, they do get good at understanding natives, and then they start using the vocabulary as well. So what you'll find on YouTube, you will find examples of conversations, and then you will find examples of lessons that are talking about vocabulary from conversations. So that's part of like these different pieces of the system here. So each one of these things is called a lesson set. And if you want to learn more about Fluent for Life, so Fluent for Life, if you go to, again, click on the link in the bio on Instagram, or if you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the link in the description or the upper right of this video, and it will take you to learning more about the program. But the bio will take you to the courses page, and you can learn more about Fluent for Life there. But the basic idea is that, like, if you are starting, just like with this example here, if you begin by watching a conversation between two native speakers, it's going to be overwhelming for you. So what we do is we take this and we break it into different pieces. So one of these, like, we're just going to focus on one thing, and this focus is very important because we want to focus and review that thing a lot, but in different ways. So we're going to take, like, you will find maybe, 100 different grammar points in a single video. But we just take one and focus on that and help you apply that in different ways through the conversations or through the lessons in the lesson set. And then when you get to the conversation, that specific grammar point is really like the thing you understand, along with the other things like the vocabulary or the culture or other things that we review. But you're learning each one of these, you're taking this information, you're seeing it again and again in different ways, which is what gets you fluent. So watching one video on YouTube about, like, here's how the lesson works, it's not really a great example of the system itself. It's the different pieces of these things because you're learning a skill. It's a habit you learn. It's not about trying to learn more vocabulary. All right? Hopefully that makes sense. But if there are any questions people have about the program, or if they're learning about, let's see if we get to the bottom if we had any more. I'm happy to see you explaining everything with so much energy. I prayed for your health. Well, thank you. I'm not unhealthy. I'm doing all right. Actually, I walk, like a couple miles a day out here in the sun. It's crazy. I have like a very heavy backpack. I walk from downtown Nagasaki. It's like, 6 kilometers or something like that. I don't know how far it is. Maybe it's not that long, but it takes me about 2 hours to do. I eat pretty healthy. I try to stay healthy. But don't worry, I'm not sick. I don't have any issues or any problems, anything like that. All right, well, it looks like that should be the end. But if you'd like to learn more, obviously you can send us an email at info@englishanyone.com. But this is really it. And I'm always curious if there's something stopping people. I think basically the biggest question we get is, how do I practice speaking when you're learning this way? And I say you don't have to practice speaking. The point is not to practice speaking, it's to get lots of input so that when you get into a conversation, you just use the vocabulary automatically. So you don't have to worry about repeating a phrase over and over again. When you understand something, just like I'm giving you these explanations in Japanese, aka, kuro, ao. And then you learn, you're learning a little bit of grammar as well, a little bit of pronunciation. Aka, akai maka. Kuro, kuroi maka. Ao, aoi maka. So you're learning these different examples and you're hearing it and your brain is like, wow, I understand what he's talking about. But of course, you can't go into a conversation and just use these correctly because it takes time to feel comfortable doing that. And it's the review that makes you comfortable. So if each day you could come with me and I could teach you a little bit more Japanese, give you a few more examples of something. Obviously, this is a very basic level because most of the people watching this probably do not know Japanese. But at a higher level with what I'm doing for English, I'm basically telling you lots of stories. So you're getting stories and you're seeing examples like in the real conversations of how native speakers are actually talking or doing things, or when we're explaining something, what do we do? So I'm showing you something and you're learning it the same way my children would be learning. All right. So it's really that simple. Let's see, is there a broken, please sir, is there broken English while you are communicating with someone verbally? I think I talked about this in another video about making mistakes. There are basically two kinds of mistakes. There is the a communication mistake where you're saying something and maybe you couldn't think like a native speaker. These are the kinds of mistakes a native would say. And if you're a good communicator, you can easily kind of weave through these things instead of saying and I don't know how to say that. So I talk a lot about not just learning the language, but how to communicate like I do. But the other problem is actual grammar mistakes. I think I talked about that maybe a week ago, whenever that video was. But those are the mistakes that natives usually do not make. All right, so there's communication errors where you just can't think of something, or something just happens like that, or you're having a grammatical error, which is more of what learners are doing. All right, let's see. I've been learning a lot with you. You might have seen comments on some videos back in 2018. I kind of feel indebted for how much I've learned from you. Well, fantastic. If you've improved, then I've done my job. So go out. Remember, I'm trying to do, as the teacher, just really make it possible for you to become a confident speaker by yourself. All right? So it's not really like me, trying to take credit for doing something. I really want to make sure that the language is understandable so that you can do all that easily by yourself. All right. So very good. If you're making progress, I think I've helped, probably quite a few people, I'm guessing. And the people that are still following me today, thank you very much for enjoying me. Looked nice to see like a heart, little hearts fly out. We need to have that on YouTube, I think. I wonder if they have something little hearts like that. But anyway, I'm going to lose my voice. Let me see what time it is. Wow, this has been, I think, an hour almost that I've been talking, at least. But hopefully, the main point of this video is just to talk about, number one, that you don't need to speak in order to get fluent. So why speaking doesn't get you fluent if you're just repeating things again and again. That's not going to get you fluent, but understanding will. All right? So understanding is the key to fluency. When you understand like a native, you speak like a native. But you don't need to be a native. You don't need to be born in an English-speaking country. You don't need to have English-speaking parents. You don't need to have English-speaking friends. You don't need to have a native speaker or a live teacher right there with you as you learn. You just need to understand the same way I'm giving you these examples with the markers. And if you can do that a little bit more each day, you will really surprise yourself with how quickly you become fluent. All right, that'll be the end of this video, I think. Thank you, man. Have a good one. All right, beautiful. Everyone's ready to go. I know I can keep talking and talking and talking, but then I won't be able to sound like I can't do Morgan Freeman. Morgan. Yeah, I can't do it now. I'm losing my voice because I'm talking too much. But remember, it really is easy. You can do it. This is how I got fluent, and this is how I've helped lots of other people get fluent. And really, when you start learning, you're like, wow, why didn't I just do that earlier? Why didn't I just start learning English the same way I learned my native language? Most of the time, it's because people just don't teach this way. Also, teachers don't think it's possible. But I do, and that's how I do what I do, even if a lot of people still don't believe it's possible. But if I can save one person, if I can save you out there, and help you become a more confident speaker, even if other people don't believe it's possible, don't worry about what they think. You can start speaking well, and people will be like, wow, how did you do that? I just believed I could do it and started understanding like a native. All right, let's see. Oh no, other people are saying, why are you not taking us over your country so you can get the language more in your brain by showing us? Why are you not taking us over your country? I don't know what that means or what that's talking about exactly, but I'm not taking over anything. But for the people who would like to learn, you can click on the link in the bio here on Instagram. That will take you to the courses page. Learn more about Fluent for Life. I'm always trying to think of better ways to explain it to people, but this is basically it. You understand like a native and you speak like one. So if you've been struggling, especially for a long time, now is the time. Get fluent. It really is that simple. And it only takes like basically a few weeks to see, wow, the system actually does work and it's guaranteed. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.